And we're back. For those people that haven't been following up into this point, we're currently sitting in the Jacob Hepner barn / compound. We got gym stuff happening in the background, shooting stuff happening out on the range. And I'm sitting here with Jake Labhart. Jake, let's talk about the state of the industry, and specifically which industry are we talking about?
Yeah.
And what's going on?
I think there's multiple there.
Yeah, what sparked this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, so I think state of the industry can, again, that's a great call out, at least as a starting point of which industry are we talking about. I think most common and largest, maybe I would say, I feel like a lot of people perceive the industry as seen from social media.
Yep. That's how it started for me.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Very similar to myself, right? Like I was working with a lot of units, but then to really see the industry, I felt like social media was a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? Avenue. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it'll work. Avenue for that, right?
Like a peek inside, you mean?
Yeah. Like to really see like what all is going on out there. So from the shooting, I think the industries we will talk on, I think the shooting industry, tactical industry, I would say maybe add 3 in there. The tactical athlete industry, and then I think the human performance industry, right? I think that those are 3 that we've dipped our toe in.
They've collided here.
Exactly. That's way better.
And I think there's been a massive car accident in a lot of other places.
Yeah. Seriously.
That's kind of how we got here.
Yeah. You know, I think that on this episode it's going to be way easier to talk about the negatives, but I think there's been some really good positives as well.
I agree. And yeah. I mean, you have to highlight both.
You have to highlight both. Yeah, absolutely. So. And I think so. You know, from the shooting industry, I think that there is a lot of personalities. I think there's a lot of, I'm going to use the word absolutes.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of absolutes. I think there's a lot of black and white. Whereas I think that we have done a good job of identifying. I do agree there's black and white, but I also think there's gray.
And there's the ability to navigate through the gray.
And navigate through, right? I think the ability to do that comes from being an expert in your craft and or field to be able to navigate, articulate what the grays are. So I think the shooting industry or the tactical industry, however we're defining that. So actually, maybe that's a good one.
I think it's 2 different things, man.
Yeah, I agreed.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a shooting industry, but I also think in terms of tactical, because it applies, you've got military, law enforcement, competition, and then you're I don't know why I always want to say concerned citizen, but you're a citizen who carries a gun, right?
Responsible citizen.
Hopefully at least they're responsible. Right. So I think that those are some of the people that shoot. So it's shooting industry, but I also think there's a tactical industry there, right? Because then we start diving off into tactics, whether it be CQB, vehicle stuff.
And how the shooting and or the human performance plays into the
applies,
tactics.
Right, exactly. So
it gets very conflated.
I think that's something. So in terms of state of the industry, I think maybe starting on that tactical, I think that there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts that are out there. I think that and we've done an episode on this already. What is a subject matter expert? So I'm not going to go back through that unless you feel like we need to.
No, I think people can go back and listen to that.
I think people can go listen to that one. But I think there's a lot of self-proclaimed. I think there are a lot of experts that are true experts or who I believe is an expert. But I think there's a lot of problems too. I think that there's one of my problems I would say that I see the most is we are very reliant on experience. Oh, you have what resume? Oh, I'm definitely going to listen. You teach me how to shoot.
Okay, so when you define it that way, is it more fair? That's not a debate.
Yeah.
Is it more fair to define that as it's more reliant on a resume versus experience? Or do you mean experience? I just want to be clear.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
I know the experience plays into the resume.
And it does, but no, I'm going to stick to my guns here. I'm going to say experience because I think there's people that it's not just the resume. I also think they have experiences and they get hyper-focused on, well, these are the experiences I've had, so this is how it's done.
That's why I asked the question.
And it's absolute, right? Because I think that there are people that do rely only on their resume, but I think experience is inside that resume, right?
Copy.
Whether it was their selection, whether it was their training, whether it was their deployment.
Right?
And I use those 3 things I break those also down because some people literally only have 1 or 2 of those, not 3 of those. I'm not saying that means you're better than anybody else, but I'm saying you're using that as your experience to then teach.
While it is an experience, it may be somewhat limited.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. Even that, so that's a great comment. I don't have a problem with you teaching or you being an educator.
Let's just be real about.
But you can't rely only on that. You still have to be proficient. You still have to be current and or relevant. You have to have grown that information and have more education.
What are you doing to continue this?
What are you doing to continue that experience, right? And so I think that's a big limiting factor. I think it honestly, in my opinion, has made it very difficult for the consumer.
Extraordinarily difficult.
Because
I could speak about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can too. Whenever I was really trying to learn shooting and understand the shooting industry, you've got all these people out there that with these massive social media followings and they're doing this and they're doing that. And you're like, those are conflicting. And then you got these 2 people going at each other and you're like, who's right, who's wrong? Well, his resume is this, his experience is this. Okay, who should I listen to? Like, it's very difficult for the consumer, in my opinion, almost to a fault, man. I feel like we're reaching a limit to where people are getting super into camps. And listen, and there's some people calling out some of those other people. I'm not going to fully go down that road. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't agree with, right?
And that's, you just, I didn't look at it this way until you just said that. Particularly now, the camps are starting to form. And I wonder if this is just because people are reaching their limit in a couple of different levels. Maybe it's their depth of knowledge or understanding, or maybe it's their limit of patience. I think camps start getting maybe built when people start reaching a limit of something.
Sure.
So that's actually something to explore. Like, I really didn't think about that. That's interesting. You just brought that up.
Listen, man, like if you cannot think with a critical mind, right? You end up in a camp.
There's strength in those numbers.
You are,
Just look at our country right now.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And so you are losing if that is what you're doing. If you get into an echo chamber and you cannot think critically and you are just like, this is the way and I'm in this camp, dude, you are straight up wrong.
You've just put, so it's interesting. So there's irony in this. If what I'm saying, if anything about what I'm saying about when people reach limits, they start to wind up in camps. The irony of that is, again, if there's any truth in that, is that once they've done that, they just exponentially increase the limitation.
Absolutely. Yeah. They are way more limited.
Interesting.
Because, listen, this is my belief. Like there is right and there is wrong. But I think that they're right. There's multiple ways it can be right. And I think sometimes you don't find that until you go on that self-exploration journey. If you believe that only this one camp is right and you don't hear these other camps because the leader of that camp or you, whatever.
Yeah, you're in an echo chamber.
Okay, well, you literally just limited, as you're saying, your performance capabilities, or you limited your capabilities, right? Which I think is something that, in my opinion, in the shooting industry right now, we're struggling with. For what we're teaching, I'll kind of more stay my lane here, I guess. But I feel as though we have tried to do a really good job of not making it only black and white, you must or must not do. I feel like we've tried to have very open conversations. And I feel like, and I'll say it right now, we've tried to say like, there is gray. Like there are times and place where things are changing. Because I think here's my struggle. People say, don't ever do this. For the longest time, we do this in our courses. What's the rule in CQB about walking backwards? And people are like, never do it. It's like, okay, who in this, I don't care who you are, listen to this podcast, every single class that I've taught, every class, someone in that class has either raised their hand or said, I had someone do it.
Right.
Okay, so here's the deal. We're saying never, ever, ever, ever do it, but it's being done. Now, also, if you're listening to this, I'm not saying we're advocating for in the SOPs to teach walking backwards in CQB. What I am saying, though, it's happening. Okay, so why are we not addressing it?
Address it, yes.
Right? Like, I guess that's my issue. And so that's a gray area, right? I understand why we should not walk backwards in CQB, but it is happening. So now we're in a gray area. And I think that we've tried to approach that from how we teach and what we put out in the industry of, I just think that's an important piece that we need to start maybe to round this out in the shooting industry. I would encourage anyone listening to look at the industry with a critical eye. Think for yourself. I don't care what that person's experience is, what that person's resume is, what our expertise is. I don't want you to just blindly follow. I want you to think, okay, how does this apply to me? Does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Okay, maybe I should train it, right? Maybe I should go play with it. Not working? Sweet.
Somebody said something to me once about this, like we were having this conversation about more specifically like vetting instructors, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think in a sense, that's what there's some of that in this, right? Like look at things with a critical eye. And we talk about like just be intelligent and be a critical thinker. And sometimes maybe some people are better at that than others for whatever reason, right?
Sure.
So to be fair. So if you're having trouble with this and you're still not sure, and maybe you're not that critical a thinker, you just don't have enough to maybe base that critical thinking off of. You got the Ben Franklin close, the line down the middle of the paper. Right. Show me the pros and the cons of this, and you don't really understand it, so you're not sure. One of the things, and we talked about this, you said like social media has made this difficult for people. In a way, again, going back to looking at it from a positive, if somebody's making a statement and you're unsure, man, just jump down into the comments.
Dude, absolutely.
And see what's going on down there.
Absolutely.
Right?
See what's how people are acting with one another.
Not but how is that interaction happening? Yes. And is there any common themes or common threads there that you might explore a little deeper?
The other one I would say is go to that person. Ask them.
The next point.
Like just ask them. Yeah. And if you get it, listen, if it barks like a dog, wags its tail like a dog, it probably a dog, right? And so, like, just again, the thinking critically, I think that's a great call out. Some people are better about it than others, absolutely. And so it is difficult for the consumer. I'm not trying to minimize that.
No, I don't think you're doing that.
But
we're just trying to give them some
solutions,
direction.
exactly.
Some direction,
some solutions. I 100% agree with that because it is hard on social media, man. Because and on the flip side of this, I understand that we've been fortunate to have instructors we've been able to collaborate with, go shoot with. And so I've been able to, or at least I'll speak for myself, I've been able to see things that like, I understand I didn't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to go put that time in, right, to find that. I was very fortunate in that. But multiple of our instructors have spent, and just to clarify, actually, we, IEP, spend money to go to classes, even though we may be better shooters than a lot of people. We still, it's important to, it's not the point. It's to learn and understand, have a deeper understanding of our craft. And I understand that not everybody can do that. Not everybody can
also, what is the consumer hearing from somebody else?
Yeah.
So that when that comes up in your class or whatever else, like you can go, yeah, I heard that too.
Absolutely.
Or I saw that. This was my interpretation.
I think it's important to be able to have an educated conversation about the industry, which is obviously where this episode came to be. But when we're teaching, listen, it's super important to give credit where credit's due. I know people say like shooting is shooting and like you got to pull a trigger, hold on to that gun, consistency, and see what you're shooting, right? I got it. It's simple. Come on now. Like, I understand we may not be bringing a bunch of new topics in, but how we're perceiving it, right? We are trying to continue to progress. And I'm not saying me, I'm saying we are, but the industry is who I'm referencing. And so absolutely, I think it's important to go to classes. At the same time, we're not trying to tell you like, hey, sometimes you just got to go find out if that person's dingling and you get information from that and then find out this person's dingling. And then all of a sudden you're like, the heavens open up. This is the best instructor ever.
That could be more efficient.
But the vetting process, we understand it's difficult. However, some ways to do that, I agree. Go look in the comments. Now, sometimes those camps start fighting. Sometimes the comments, it's not a perfect solution, but we're just saying it is a solution. And then from there, I would recommend go straight to that person. Send them a message and say, hey, can we talk about this? I'm just curious. I want to understand more about your class. I want to understand the why behind what you do. And then go to one of those other camps. See what they're doing, right? And so I think vetting instructors, yes, difficult. However, going back to one of the things I said earlier on, I would highly caution you. If that instructor is writing clearly only their experience, they don't have the proficiency, they cannot speak educated on the community, or what else is out there. I'm telling you self-critically, or how to think critically, that is a problem.
I agree with you 100%. I think like the folks out there that are professionals, true professionals, are trying to know who the other true professionals are.
Absolutely.
And it's not that they're getting in one another's camp or they're, I'm going to use this term, it's maybe a little inappropriate, but they're not dick riding. Right. And it's not a boys club.
Yep.
I think what it comes down to is like, who do I trust that is at least attempting to be a true professional in this community? And there's going to be a lot of questions about that, because I think there are behaviors out there that contradict maybe what a professional would be. But I also think that comes with any industry and anywhere you go. There's always going to be outliers that what they're saying isn't wrong, right? And but just the way they're saying it may be a little off-putting to you or somebody else. But the meat and potatoes of what they're bringing to the table is okay. Like I've worked for a lot of people in my life, right? And at one point I was like, I don't want to work for somebody else anymore. I'm going to do my thing. And there were people that I took away from all the leadership that
Absolutely.
I ever, and all the trainers and the bosses and the managers or whatever that I always had. And there were things that I liked and things that I didn't like. I never, so going back to like getting your feelings hurt or whatever else, like I never really had my feelings hurt unless somebody was coming at me personally.
Right.
But I knew really, really quickly, like, that I could recognize, is this person going after somebody personally based on opinion, or are they going after somebody like hard because they're not fulfilling their job description?
Yeah.
They're letting other people down on the team.
There's a passion and a care for the industry.
There's a consequence to what you did.
Yeah.
And I need you to understand that. And I am upset, not emotional at you. You're a bad person. But what you did is not acceptable. It's not okay. And
because I care too much about this industry to let that go. Right.
So I think that gets misconstrued a lot. I think on both sides, those that are, maybe doing it and those that aren't. I don't fault anybody for it. I just think it gets, like, for me, I just kind of sit back and try to be very objective and think about it critically.
Obviously, as close friends we are, like that's one of the approaches we try to take with IEP.
Right.
Because, the honey better than vinegar conversation. And again, I'm not faulting anyone. I think that we all can handle situations probably better, right? So again, I'm not throwing shade. I could not agree more. And
it's just navigating this, right?
and I hear people, this is another one I hear consistently, is like, well, I'm not going to go be best friends with him. I just need him to teach me how to shoot better. And it's like, okay, like I got that. And I don't disagree, but guys, also how that information is projected and received limits, whether in a good way or a bad, limits or exceeds my learning capabilities. And so it's one of those things, like, everybody's different. So quit. I don't like that excuse, whether good or bad, frankly. Like, no, just everybody's different on that. So if that person's a problem for, they just don't go.
They're not the right flavor for you.
They're not the right flavor for you.
There's a million flavors out there. There's Baskin Robbins out there for sure.
And there's good instructors out there. So going to the positive, I feel like we've hammered the negative. There are instructors that approach things different ways. Some of them don't like each other, that are good humans, that are trying genuinely, I think, to impact the industry in a good way. And I think that when you go talk to one of them, that I do think that they're able to articulate their process. However, you, at the end of the day, that instructor is only one piece to that puzzle.
Yep.
You have to take that information.
Personal responsibility.
I don't care. I do not care what instructor is out there. Any of them. Some of the guys that are, again, good friends, that I think are good instructors. They're maybe great at their craft. Like, literally, they can be all-knowing. But if you don't put in the time to train it when you leave that class, it is null and void. It does not matter. So all these things we're saying about the industry, the instructors, and we're not talking about the drama, but the things that are happening, the good there is you have options.
Yeah, tons.
You have tons of options.
I think that's the challenge for a lot of people, is maybe sometimes you get overwhelmed with how many options there are.
Sure.
Like, there maybe in the past, if you go back 10, 15 years, there was like 10 or 15 guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now it's hundreds.
And actually, you saying that, actually, my knee-jerk reaction, like, as I was listening, I was thinking, what solution can we give the listener, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you've already given some, but I think for me, maybe I'll speak on myself. I'm not saying this is right. This is just what I do.
I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Because again,
what are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I'm really big on, like, I'm gonna have to use. I don't care. Hey, this person seems to be putting out stuff. People like it. They're a high performer. It's worth my time to go see what it's about, so I can learn. Generally, however, at the end of the day, though, I know that I have to put in the time. So I think I'm a little bit more lax about it, I guess, is my point. Because I'm just kind of like, I know I'm going to have to put in time after anyways. So I just need some nuggets to see how are they articulating information, or what is the skill that I can take away. Because again, I don't believe that any instructor, no matter how good we are, is going to give you piece of information, right? It's
No
a
matter
piece.
how hard they try.
I don't care who it is. And so how does Jake look at an instructor and vet? I think, me personally, I try to see who they are as a person, or how do I think I will respond to that information.
It's number one for me.
Yep. Like, I think that's something, in my opinion, if I can't get past that hurdle of trusting them enough to hear what they're saying, then that's going to be a difficult one for me. 2, proficiency. I think that the proficiency, in my opinion, is something that I need to see as a consumer. Can that person do what they're telling me? Now, I will tell you straight up, I think it's very difficult online to gauge proficiency. I've trained with a lot of really, really good shooters. You see them online, and I go train with them. I'm on my flight out, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm about to get wrecked. And then I get out there, and I'm like, okay, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do.
Right.
All right. And it's a good time. And I'm not saying that I don't still get beat, but it's like, okay, it's really easy to look really good on social media. And not that it's even intended by them. I'm not trying to say it's malicious. I'm just saying you get to see the best.
Yeah,
on social media,
reel.
Right? It's a highlight
most
reel.
of the time. No matter, even if you're putting in some of the, I really messed this up today, I'm just putting my, being honest. You're still gonna,
yes, exactly.
You're still gonna see way more of the good stuff, because that's what people really want to see.
Exactly, right? And so
that's how it works.
You're trying to earn validity. So I look at proficiency. The other one is I try to look at how do I say this? I think, how does that person articulate information? So in my opinion, it is a skill to be able to educate and instruct.
It's 100% a skill.
That is,
I don't think, like, you can say it's an opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day.
I just think it is absolutely a skill. And what I see is people they may be a good person. They may not be a good person. They may be amazing at shooting a gun. But if they cannot articulate and educate and instruct in a way, I'm just, again, this is Jake. I'm just trying to give you solutions to the listener. I think it's a waste of your time, because there are people that are really, 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 really good shooters. There's a lot of really good shooters. But if they cannot educate, like, you are wasting your time going to that class.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. We covered, I think Hebner did a really good job of kind of articulating that in terms of, going to a specific coach for a specific thing.
Yeah.
Because you can go to a specific coach for a specific thing, but if they're still not a good coach for you, you mentioned, like, the first thing, like, do you feel like you can make a connection with this person, or can you get past, like, whatever the thing is? I don't know.
Yeah.
Then you're going to come up short, and you're going to be disappointed. And then what does that turn into? Oh, this guy sucks. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
Which isn't,
and sometimes
so maybe there's some truth in that, but let's be honest.
I think that's a great call out too. Sometimes there is truth to that, but sometimes that's you as the consumer. You did not have the right expectation of what are you going in there for to learn from that person.
That's very important. Is
right?
having realistic, reasonable expectations,
and owning that. Like, you know what?
Oh yeah,
I was expecting this. This was not the class that I expected. It doesn't mean that instructor's bad. It's maybe you had the wrong expectation going in of what am I going to learn. Mm-hmm. So that takes me to another point that I think is important. When I look at an instructor, how many things are they teaching? Right? Are they an expert at this, or are they a quote? I know, or you can't all see me, but I'm with air quotes. I'm an expert at 50 things. Okay. Unfortunately, I do not believe that most people can do that. I don't care what your experience is.
I wouldn't want to be that guy.
I don't. It's more so that I don't want to go take a class from that person. You're half-assing a lot of things.
Or could be. Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades probably are. Right. Versus, I would rather go to this guy over here who teaches me this skill. And again, that's my expectation, and that's going to enhance the possibility I'm going to learn from that situation, right? And so I think going to that expert at this over here, taking it back, honing that skill, right? I think is an important thing as a consumer to understand how to do, instead of expecting, well, this person teaches 50 things and they have this experience, so therefore I'm going to learn X, Y, Z. And it's like, no.
Yeah, I think so. As I break that down, I think there's a very small percentage of people that can teach I don't want to say 50. We're using that. We pulled
Yeah,
that
no,
number
I
out
know.
of thin
I'm
air,
pulling,
but
yeah.
let's say they have like 6 different offerings.
That's a really good, that's a good
six
call.
different offerings. You have to look at what those offerings are. What's the combination of those offerings? Because I think there are people, and then again, who are they doing that with? Are they doing that all by themselves, or are they bringing in like co-instructors, AIs
Absolutely.
that can bring something different to the table? I think, again, I just want to be careful with this, that it's not a never, that you can't do that.
I appreciate you. It's a good call.
But I think that percentage of people is very small.
Yep, I agree.
And that's what we need to be aware of.
Agreed.
And so if you're looking for a person like that, they exist. Maybe they don't fill all the buckets for you.
I was going to say, and it's, again, you got to still be you got to be critical, right? As you're looking at it. Because, again, maybe they are an expert at multiple different things per their background, how they continue. I will tell you from personal experience, the more we teach shooting, so pistol, carbine,
I know where you're going,
scoped carbine, precision rifles, I am telling you, there is so much time in the day.
Yeah.
It is difficult, and we shoot a lot to stay at a high level of proficiency, but also understand and educate, right, to have that expertise. I think you make a great call out. Are there other people? This is not Jake. We've got multiple shooters on the team that some of us are stronger in one weapon system versus another, but we're all building it towards the same goal of IEP, specifically with human performance in the movement, right? So I do think it is a great call because I'm not trying to be like, hey, listen, if that person teaches 6 things, don't ever go to them.
Right.
That's not the case. So I appreciate you clarifying. I do think some of those people are more rare. Mm-hmm. I think there are people that when I see trying to teach, and I'm not talking about weapon systems because I think shooting is shooting and there's a lot of foundational things there. But if they're trying to teach this CQB and this type vehicle CQB, house CQB, HR, trauma medicine, human performance, pistol, rifle, carbine, like night vision, like we're getting to a limit where it's like, okay, now, and there's one person in that company, I'm going to be like, let's take this back for a second. We need to think about this. Is this the expert, or would I rather go to this guy over here who's night vision only on a rifle and a pistol?
This is what they do.
And this is what they do.
They're super passionate about it. So I think like, because you can get that in multiple industries that way.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's not just, crossing over to human performance.
Yep.
Again, Hepner brought this up the other day when he was ready to, he knew his worst lift was a snatch, right? And he needed to get better at that. And he had reached the limit with the current coach that he was with, who was a CrossFit coach who handled all the disciplines to basically be like, okay, for me to get better at this, I need to go seek out the person that just does this thing and did that. And it was successful.
And I want everyone to hear who just said that. Again, that is Jacob Hepner, a professional CrossFit athlete. This is not some
stepping outside
person that just like is a local CrossFit box. Right. This is a professional athlete saying, hey, you know what we do? We go find the expert of that, right? And so again, I think that's super important. The other thing I'll cover on that I think is important if you are going to do those things and they're going to have multiple modalities, I think again, another litmus test or check. This is where, going back to what I said earlier, now this is where experience does come into play. If someone is teaching CQB and they have never done CQB, it's at that point, it's all theory.
That's a different level.
I think that there are things you need to be self-critical on. I keep saying self-critical. I guess that you need to be self-critical. Am I thinking? But,
I think it's an accurate statement.
But you need to be thinking, what is this person's experience? If they have no concept, if they have never done this in real life, if they don't have that expertise, because experience is it is an important piece. Again, I think in the industry, it's
in the shooting side of things.
In the shooting side of things, in the shooting side of things. And so, again, I hope we've given some solutions there on the shooting side. I think, honestly, though, so we don't just go crazy, wicked long here, because I think we could, moving over to the human performance, all these same rules apply.
Exactly the same rules apply.
This is no different. There's a lot of flavors out there. I would still look at what is that person's expertise? What are they teaching? What, do I think I can learn from them? Do they articulate things well?
It's also, what is your expectation? What are you trying to get out of it?
And what are your expectations?
Yeah, what are you trying to get out of there?
Yep.
Again, like if I'm just trying to be an overall well-rounded athlete, there are a lot of coaches that can do a really good job of that. But if you want to be a high level, you want to go to the Pan Am Games or Olympic Games, on the Olympic weightlifting team, well, then you need to go to a weightlifting expert,
Yeah.
and that's how you need to train.
And let's bring it back to what, like, I would say our following, or probably a lot of the people listening to this, if you're so let's shift over to tactical athlete.
Yep.
If you are one of those tactical athletes, like to what Scott just said, I think super important you don't care about the Olympic, you're not going to the Olympic Games. But if you're bringing somebody in to make you better at your job, okay, does that person understand your job?
Your job.
Right? Yep. I don't care what human performance god that they are. If they don't understand your job, that is a massive problem. And
that goes back to the football, the NCAA or the pro football strength conditioning guys being brought into an agency to teach them how to be better at their job.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you don't understand what I do here. So that's a massive limiting problem.
Right.
And so when you're looking from the tactical athlete side, I think, and I'll tell you straight up, this is what I tell, because I get a lot of calls from strength coaches and PTs, both of them. I will have them reach out via social media, or sometimes they'll email me and say, hey, how do I get into the tactical industry?
Yeah.
How do I do what you have done?
Because they see an opportunity.
Yeah. And because, listen, man, I would 10 times 10 out of 10 and twice on Sunday, like I would rather be out here doing what I'm doing now than being in a clinic. I'm not knocking being in a clinic. I'm just saying, for me, this is the right move. And I have a lot of PTs and, like I said, strength coaches will reach out and be like, how do I get in the tactical space? Are y'all looking for positions and blah, blah, blah. Here's what I tell them. If you don't have a background in this industry or don't understand this industry,
got a lot of work to do.
You got to go earn it. Like, I did not ask for money out the gate. I went and asked for experience. I watched teams shoot. I watched teams do CQB. I didn't go straight to the federal teams, which I'm not saying that they're better. Some of them are. I didn't just go to the local teams. I wanted to see everybody. I wanted to see every flavor out there, good, bad, ugly. So I had more experience and I had a better understanding of the industry. And so when I talk to these people and they ask me that, how can I work with the tactical athlete? And I'm telling you as a consumer, if you're going to go straight up, because I tell teams this, somebody will be like, hey man, I have a strength coach in the area. What do you think? And I'm like, you tell them to come out and watch what y'all do and let them earn it. Do not pay them a cent until they've earned that, right? Because I think if they don't have that experience, they are not going to make you better at your job. They're going to make you better at whatever their expertise is in.
That intention there is so important. So it's a little bit of a different thing, but that's where I was coming from. Go back to the other podcast where we're just sort of talking about the history of IEP, past, present, future, what's going on, and kind of how I wound up here with you, and what's currently going on. The point I'm trying to make is, when I got in this, I was like, man, I really want to contribute here. Like, that's it. I just want to, because I see there's a need, and I have some skills, and I'm not sure how to apply those skills based on the needs that I'm a little unsure about, but I can see some really obvious glaring things.
Yeah.
How do I do this? And it started with building relationships.
Yeah.
First off, I have to go to do some things and talk to some people. And the questions I'm asking them are not, how do I do what you do?
Right.
That is not what I'm asking. My question is how my questions are more very fundamental in how do I get better at whatever it is that you're teaching, right? And observing not just the instruction, but how the instruction is being done. More importantly, I say this all the time, like on the shows, like I study the characters.
Yeah.
And it's not just the instructor I'm standing in front of, it's all the people around me and how are they absorbing that information. And I use that as a valuation on how maybe valuable that class is to the larger masses or whatever. And I think it can go back to the critical thinking piece and kind of where the industry is right now. I think what you're seeing is this is a positive in that there are those instructors. Again, there were, let's say, like I said this before, like there were 15. Now there's hundreds of them, there's hundreds of them. Those original 15 are, some of them have kind of, they've kind of weeded themselves out, if I'm being honest. And some of them are kind of coming together and going, hey, I can learn something from this guy over here, and let's go take classes from them, let's come together and let's ask questions, have critical thinking type conversations, call them debates, whatever gets the follows and the views and whatever else. But my point of that is people are coming together, and I think that's a positive thing in the industry. In that,
absolutely,
and it's not camps. I want to be clear on what we were talking about with like camps, and they've reached their limit. They're actually going, maybe I've been a little limiting.
Right.
And so now I'm reaching out, and that's not a camp forming. That is I'm reaching out to understand things better. So I want to be clear about that, because that was my thing too, is like, I'm not endorsing or criticizing anybody.
I'm glad you.
This is my journey. This is like my experience. I'm just trying to learn more. And the intention was what I just fucking said.
Right.
I want to learn. So again, and I want to earn that conversation. And I earn those conversations just by having the conversations.
Yeah.
So, and I don't expect to be looked at as a subject matter expert in shooting. I know I'm not, right? That's not what I'm trying to be.
I think a really important piece here, which you're not saying, which I have no problem talking about you, is that is the right attitude to have, though. I just think, like, as I was listening to you, the first time you came out to the federal and local guys that we were teaching out in the San Francisco area, right? It wasn't a come in and an expectation of this. You had questions. You wanted to learn. Then I think of like even T2POA recently. You did not go talk with these guys and be like, hey, this is my expertise. I think about some of the teams that I remember you talking to. It was always questions to learn more about them and what they do, right?
That's it.
And I think that is, and then we go to the range. You watched myself, Sal, Anthony, as we're teaching, of never being like, hey, what do you think about we should do this? It was, hey, why do you do that? And I think that is the right route. And again, I mean, I think there's black and white on this. I think there's right and wrong. That is the right route to me. And I think if you're a professional in the space, especially in the human performance industry, and you want to come into tactical, that's the way to do it. If you come in and you're like, this is what I do, and this is how I would change what you're doing. Okay. Well, if you don't have the questions leading up to that to understand, that is a problem. If you're a consumer, you need to be seeking out the people like Scott that I believe that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to be people that have an open mind to allow for growth. We're confident in what we teach and our expertise, but then we're willing to talk to anybody.
Yep, exactly.
We're not camps, and it's not endorsing this or that or whatever. Listen, if we get isolated into this is the way, like that limits our learning.
I'm not interested in that. If it ever comes to that, I'm done.
Yeah. And fortunately, that's not going to happen. But no, man, I think we've nailed it. I think, again, there is a lot of frustration. I said negative earlier, but I think there's a lot of frustration in the industry. But I want to leave on a positive note. I think that there are a lot of good things happening. I think there's a lot of people talking. And this is the time to be a shooter. You were having a whole lot of people putting out free information. So much
available, man.
And there's so much available. I understand, and I think you do too, obviously. It can be overwhelming. That said, think with a critical eye, or look at it with a critical eye. Think for yourself, where does this fit in my world? If I'm going to go to an instructor, think through, and again, I gave you my process, but think through, what is your process? Just have a process, right? That will limit, and it's going to strike some people off the list. And then it's going to limit, or not limit, but it's going to narrow down your options so you can make a better, well-informed decision. So, hopefully that's some good insight on the human performance, where it bleeds over to tactical, then the tactical, tactical in the shooting industry.